My daughter beamed as the salesman handed over the keys. "He used my dad's account, he owed us anyway," she said, loud enough for the whole dealership to hear. Laughter rippled, a few brows raised, and one woman whispered behind her coffee lid. She had never spoken of me like that before. So why now? Then came the voice, "Sir, we'll just need your signature here for the $20,000 balance." Whose signature was on that check, and why wasn't it mine? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, where you're watching from right now. The checkbook was still on the counter, but one page was torn. Not missing. Torn. Jagged at the edge like it had been yanked in a hurry. I stood there for a second, mug of lukewarm coffee in my hand, eyes stuck on the leather cover that had followed me through every bill, birthday, and grocery list since 1987. The kitchen felt unusually cold that morning, though the September sun was pouring in through the blinds. The smell of eggs lingered, but the pan was empty, left half-cleaned in the sink. From the hallway, I heard their muffled voices, laughing. Laughing like nothing had happened the day before. Like a $20,000 check hadn't been passed across a dealership desk without my name, my permission, or my presence. I walked back to the table and sat down in my usual chair. The one closest to the window. The one Martha always leaned over when she served Sunday breakfast. I could almost hear her voice again, "Sign it, Bill, it's just the light bill, not a declaration of war." She always teased me for checking every digit. It was a different kind of world back then. One where signatures meant respect. Not theft. My daughter waltzed in, hair tied in a messy bun, still in pajama pants and holding her phone like it was glued to her hand. "Morning, Dad," she chirped, too brightly. She glanced once at the checkbook, then grabbed a yogurt from the fridge like nothing had happened. I sipped the coffee and asked casually, "Did you use the checkbook yesterday?" She didn't even blink. "Yeah, we just handled it." "You were gonna help us with the down payment anyway, right?" I froze mid-sip. "I didn't write that check." She shrugged. "Harry did. He knows how to copy your signature." "It's fine, Dad. Don't overthink." She walked out humming, like it was just another Thursday. The air thinned. Not heavy, but dry. As if the walls had stopped holding warmth. I looked back at the checkbook. The torn page left behind a faint carbon shadow, proof of what had been taken, proof that no one had asked. I flipped through the remaining checks. The next one had a tiny pen dot in the corner. A habit I had, always dotted the corner first, then signed. This one was blank. Fresh. But the one taken. I didn't dot that. Which meant he didn't just copy my signature, he tried to mimic my habit. Tried and failed. A slow burn crept up my chest, not anger exactly, but the kind of quiet betrayal that doesn't shout, it whispers. The radio in the living room played soft country. Harry's favorite. He had it loud enough to carry through the house, like he was claiming space one song at a time. I stood, walked toward the hallway, and stopped. Their bedroom door was open. Inside, a pair of new shoes sat beside the bed, designer sneakers with tags still swinging. The kind he always said were too expensive for a man trying to build a future. A receipt stuck out from the shoebox. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. I walked back to the kitchen and opened the back door. The breeze smelled like cut grass and gasoline. A lawnmower buzzed in a neighbor's yard. Everything looked ordinary, but my house no longer felt like mine. That checkbook had been my ledger of love, my proof that I had provided, year after year, quietly, without applause. And now it was just paper. Paper they could rip without blinking. I heard the front door open. Harry's voice floated in, casual, cheerful. "You see the look on their faces when we rolled out of there, babe? That car's a beast." She giggled. "Yeah. You were right, Dad didn't even flinch. He laughed harder. Old man probably doesn't even know what day it is. I stepped back inside, quietly shut the door behind me. I didn't speak. Didn't confront. Just stood there, back in the kitchen, eyes fixed on the checkbook. The radio crackled. Footsteps moved upstairs. Laughter trailed behind them. The checkbook sat still. Only now, it looked like a wound. That night, I stayed up late, staring at the same torn page, wondering when my silence stopped being respect, and started becoming permission. The cashier paused. "This card's declined, sir." I blinked at her. "Run it again, please." She gave me a polite, practiced smile, then typed again. The beep came sharp and final. "Declined." The line behind me shifted. A toddler whined. Someone coughed. The young man bagging groceries looked up, hesitant. I felt the air tighten around my collar. "This one's linked to your joint account, right?" she asked gently. I nodded slowly. "Yes. I've used it for 20 years. She lowered her voice, but it still cut. "Looks like the primary account was drained. I can try another card?" I didn't have another one. Not for that account. I slid the card back into my wallet and pulled out a few wrinkled bills, just enough to cover the essentials. The rest, bread, eggs, peanut butter, I left behind. "I'll be back later," I muttered. A man in a flannel jacket stepped forward. "Tough times, huh?" he said with a half-smile that wasn't meant to hurt, but did. Outside, the sky was pale and windless. But I felt exposed. Cold. The walk home took longer than usual. Not because the road changed, but because my mind did. The checkbook wasn't just a memory now. It was evidence. Evidence that somewhere between signing tuition checks and grocery bills, I had signed away my authority. Or worse, they'd taken it without asking. I walked through the front door and heard the blare of a TV upstairs. My daughter sat at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone. A half-empty smoothie cup sweated on the counter. I held up the grocery bag, half of what I'd planned. "Card didn't work," I said, calm. "Did something happen to the account?" She didn't even look up. "Oh yeah, we moved some stuff around. Harry's got a new joint with me now, easier for bills and car payments." I set the bag down slowly. "Without telling me?" She glanced up then, eyes annoyed. "Dad, it's not like you were using it for anything important. Harry's job needs reliable wheels. We just made the adult choice." My voice stayed steady, but my hands curled against the bag. "You forged a check. You drained my account. And you never asked." She crossed her arms. "You always say family comes first. So we acted like family." I stepped back. "That's not family. That's theft." She scoffed. "No, that's called stepping up. Something you haven't done since Mom passed." The words hit like cold steel. Harry walked in, sunglasses on indoors, chewing gum like a teenager. "Hey old man, relax. It's just money." He dropped his keys on the counter, keys to a brand new car, and poured himself a soda. "Besides," he said, smirking, "you should be glad we're even letting you stay here rent-free." I looked at my daughter. Her silence was agreement. There it was. The shift. Not just in tone, but in status. I wasn't the provider anymore. I was an inconvenience. I walked to the sideboard, opened the drawer, and pulled out the checkbook. My old leather one, worn down and nearly empty now. "This," I said, holding it up, "built this house. Fed this family. Paid for prom dresses and tires and hospital bills." Harry chuckled. "And now it paid for something useful." I placed the checkbook down on the table, flat and deliberate. I want it back. All of it. Daughter leaned forward. You're not serious. I stared straight at her. I am. You didn't ask. You stole. She shook her head. No, Dad. We took what was already half ours. And if you're gonna start throwing ultimatums, maybe it's time we had one too. She stood up. You can either support our choices, or find another place to stay. There it was. The ultimatum. Not screamed. Not even angry. Just cold. Calculated. Like I was a guest overstaying my welcome. I didn't speak. I couldn't. That evening, I went out for air. At the diner, I ran into Paul McKinley, the town mechanic. He raised an eyebrow when he saw me. Heard Harry bought himself a beast, Paul said, sipping his coffee. Said your money finally went to good use. I froze. He told you that? He nodded, then added, didn't sit right with me. Kinda sounded like he'd won something. Behind the counter, one of the waitresses leaned to her coworker and whispered. I saw her glance at me, then away. It was starting. The whispers. The sideways looks. The judgment. Back home, they were watching TV, popcorn between them like nothing had changed. I walked past them in silence, back to my room. I opened the nightstand and looked at the checkbook one last time. Only a few checks remained. Each one now held more meaning than money. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, realizing the worst part wasn't what they took. It was what they no longer saw me as. The bank manager tilted her head. You authorized this check, right? Her voice was calm, but something about the way her eyes flicked to the screen made my stomach turn. I leaned closer to the glass. I never signed a check for that amount. She tapped the keyboard, frowning. It cleared yesterday. 20,000 even. Memo line just said, down payment. Verified. My breath caught. The same number. The same lie. I need to see that check. She hesitated, then printed a copy. It landed in front of me with a mechanical thud. My own signature stared back, except it wasn't mine. Close. Familiar. But not mine. The loop on the W was wrong. The spacing was tight. Whoever wrote it had studied my hand, but they hadn't lived in it. And below it, my account number, my name, and a box checked, authorized by family. The manager adjusted her glasses. We were told it was a family joint. Daughter confirmed over the phone. I clenched the arms of the chair. Can I file a report? She nodded slowly. You can. But since it wasn't technically forged by a stranger, it gets tricky. Of course it did. Family fraud isn't a crime, it's a gray zone. A betrayal too personal for the law, too legal for the heart. I left the bank with the copy folded tightly in my coat pocket. The wind had picked up. Leaves danced along the sidewalk, and a boy chased a runaway flyer with his father behind him. The man caught it, handed it to his son, and they laughed. Just a regular day in a town that had already started whispering. When I got home, the new car sat in the driveway, glistening with factory shine. I paused at the mailbox, pulled out bills and one glossy envelope addressed to Harry and Amanda Wilkinson. No mention of me. My house. My name. Inside, the living room had been rearranged. My chair pushed to the corner, replaced by some leather recliner with USB ports. Amanda stood in the kitchen, pouring herself a drink. Everything okay, Dad? I dropped the envelope on the table. You listed your names as primary residents. She didn't flinch. Well, we live here. Might as well be official. I held up the printed check. This isn't my signature. She walked over, took one glance, and said, "It's close enough." My voice dropped. "Close enough isn't yours to decide." She leaned on the counter, arms folded. "You always said this house would be ours someday. We're just getting ahead." I stared at her. "You mean stealing ahead?" She sighed, like I was the child now. "Dad, we needed the car. You weren't using the money. You live like it's still 1995. I stepped back. "You don't get to rewrite history." Harry walked in through the back, car keys in hand, sunglasses tucked into his shirt collar. "Hey old man, you like the ride?" I didn't answer. He dropped the keys on the table, on top of the check copy. "Paid cash," he grinned. "Well, almost." I picked up the check again, stared at it. "You know this is fraud." Harry shrugged. "Nah. It's family leverage." Amanda added, "And if you make this into a war, don't forget, we've got friends who can say you've been confused lately. Might not go well for you if this hits court." That stopped me cold. She was threatening my mind. My memory. My identity. I placed the check down, slow and careful, as if it might explode. "I see," I said quietly. "Good," she replied. "Let's not make this ugly." I turned and walked to my room, the hallway stretching longer than it ever had. I could feel the house slipping beneath my feet, each floorboard groaning under the weight of my silence. I opened my drawer. The checkbook sat there, flat and tired. Only 3 checks left. I ran my fingers over the leather. This wasn't just paper. It was history. Every line ever signed had built their world. And now they'd weaponized it. That night, I skipped dinner. They didn't knock. I sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere downstairs, I heard laughter. Then a door closing. Then silence. I imagined Martha's voice again. "Don't let your kindness turn into your coffin." I opened the checkbook, tore one last check from the pad, and stared at it. Not to use it, but to remember what it meant. And that's when I knew, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a takeover. And they weren't done yet. He laughed and tossed my old checkbook aside. "We run this now." The checkbook hit the floor like it meant nothing. Leather cracked open, pages fanned out, decades of my life, scattered. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Just watched. Harry stepped over it like it was an empty receipt. Amanda leaned on the kitchen island, sipping orange juice, cool as ever. "You should be thanking us," she said. "This house finally feels updated. Livelier. Less old." I looked at the walls. Photos of Martha and me had been replaced, one taken down, the others shifted to the hallway, out of view. The living room smelled like new paint and plastic. My chair was gone. "Where's the recliner?" Amanda waved her hand. Salvation Army picked it up. "You barely used it anyway." I stepped forward. "You didn't ask." Harry's smirk returned. "You didn't stop us." And there it was. Not an oversight. Not an accident. A challenge. Amanda walked around the island and placed a folder on the counter. "Look, we're trying to keep things peaceful, Dad. But we can't keep doing half measures. You're either in this family's future, or you're in the way." I opened the folder. Inside, a printed budget. Their budget. Mortgage, car payments, credit card bills, daycare, none of which had my name but all of which leaned on my account. Every column ended in the same word, Dad. Amanda pointed. "We'll need you to start transferring $2,000 a month. Just until Harry's new job stabilizes." "And if I don't?" Harry answered. "Then maybe it's time you find somewhere else to stay." The words landed without apology. Just business. I looked down again at the checkbook on the floor. Amanda saw the hesitation and smiled, mistaking my silence for surrender. You always said family comes first. I picked up the checkbook slowly. Pages torn, spine bruised, corners worn soft. It had outlived 3 cars, 2 mortgages, and 1 beautiful marriage. And now it was a prop in their play. Amanda continued, voice softer. We'll keep the bills running through your name, for now. But it's not sustainable unless you start contributing actively. You're lucky we're even involving you, Dad. I set the checkbook back down on the counter. Carefully. Not tossed. Not dropped. Set. I looked at them both. Is that your final decision? Amanda nodded without hesitation. Yes. Harry added, we're building something here. You can either help, or get out of the way. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't argue. I turned, walked down the hall, and entered my room. Shut the door quietly behind me. The suitcase was still in the closet. Same one I used when Martha and I took that anniversary trip to Michigan. I pulled it down, zipped it open, and began folding clothes. Socks. Slacks. Sweaters. No rush. Just rhythm. I opened the drawer beside my bed. The photo of Martha still sat inside, framed in soft wood. She wore that lake blue blouse she always loved. Her smile never looked more alive. I set it gently in the suitcase. Next, my passport. My medicine. A shaving kit. I stared at the closet wall for a moment, one I hadn't seen bare in years. Footsteps creaked outside. A pause. Then a voice. Dad? I didn't answer. Are you packing? Still, I said nothing. I zipped the suitcase closed, slow and loud. Each tooth of the zipper sealing a decision. Amanda's voice trembled. Wait, are you actually leaving? I stepped out into the hallway, suitcase behind me, coat folded over my arm. Harry stood at the other end, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I thought we were discussing support, Amanda said, now worried. I walked past her without a glance. At the kitchen door, I paused, looked at the counter where the checkbook lay. I reached into my coat, pulled out a post-it, and scribbled a line. Then I stuck it to the checkbook and left it there, in the center of the kitchen. Amanda stepped forward and read it aloud. You mistook silence for weakness. That's your second mistake. I opened the door. The air was sharp, clear. The sky wide. They didn't follow me. Not that time. I walked down the path, each step echoing like a goodbye. That night, I checked into a $42 motel and stared at the ceiling, realizing they hadn't just pushed me out. They'd freed me. And now I was finally going to teach them the price of betrayal. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, where you're watching from right now. I pulled the suitcase from the closet. Its zipper sounded louder than thunder. Every tooth of that metal track marked the end of something. Not just my time in that house, but my place in that family. And I didn't slam doors. I didn't yell. I simply zipped. Martha's photo was wrapped in an old flannel shirt. I'd tucked a small deposit slip inside it, faded blue ink that read, First deposit, $100, October 1986. Our first shared account. Our first joint promise. Now they had gutted that same account for a car. I stepped into the hallway, suitcase rolling behind me like a shadow. No one came out to stop me. Amanda was on a phone call, laughing. Harry was upstairs, blasting music. I walked past the kitchen one last time. The checkbook still sat on the counter with my note stuck to it, flapping gently in the breeze of the open window. I didn't touch it. It wasn't mine anymore. The front door creaked open, and I paused on the porch. The afternoon sun had started to dip, turning everything golden and unforgiving. Neighbors across the street glanced up. Mrs. Green was pruning her roses. Mr. Dalton from next door raised a brow but didn't wave. Just stared. I nodded at them both. Not in greeting. In goodbye. The motel was 7 minutes away by cab. The kind of place where the front desk clerk doesn't ask questions, just hands you a plastic keycard with a worn smile. Just one night? She asked. I nodded. Maybe more. The room was small, 2 lamps, 1 flickering, carpet that didn't match the curtains. But it was quiet. Mine. No footsteps overhead. No insults tossed across dinner. I placed the suitcase near the bed and laid the checkbook's last deposit slip on the nightstand beside Martha's photo. A soft hum from the ceiling fan replaced the hollow silence that had clung to me for days. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I'd already shed every tear when Martha passed. This was a different kind of grief. This was clarity. That night, I walked into the diner near the motel. Same place Martha and I used to stop before doctor visits. The waitress, Julie, recognized me instantly. Well, if it isn't Mr. Wilkinson. Haven't seen you in a while. Been busy, I said. She poured coffee without asking. Your daughter and her guy were in here earlier. Flashy car. Tipped with 100 like they were royalty. I forced a smile. Guess you taught them right, huh? She added. I sipped my coffee. Guess so. But something in my voice made her pause. Her eyes narrowed. They said you were traveling. That you gave them the house. Said you were downsizing. I looked up. And just like that, the fallout had begun. Julie wasn't nosy. But small towns run on crumbs. She'd passed this along, quietly, accidentally, to a neighbor, to a friend, to a congregation. By morning, whispers would be louder than truth. Julie, I said softly, do me a favor. She leaned in. Sure. If anyone asks, tell them I said nothing. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. Outside the diner, a man I barely knew stopped me. Hey, Bill. That was your daughter's car, right? Real beauty. Heard she paid cash. I nodded slowly. Something like that. Good to see family taking care of each other. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. You too, Mike. Each step back to the motel felt heavier. I opened the room door, dropped my coat on the chair, and sat at the edge of the bed. They weren't just lying now. They were rewriting the script. And the town? It was already watching the wrong version. But that was okay. Because I had something they didn't. Time. I pulled out my laptop. Logged into my accounts. Mortgage. Insurance. Utility bills. Everything tied to my name. And all of it, with one click, could begin to vanish. Not out of spite. Out of principle. They had stolen without shame. Now they'd learn what it meant to lose without notice. As I hovered over the first cancellation button, the screen asked, "Are you sure?" I didn't hesitate. Because for the first time in years, I absolutely was. By sunrise, I had a phone in one hand and their mortgage in the other. No coffee. No music. No distractions. Just numbers, dates, passwords, and silence. The motel lamp buzzed in the corner. The light painted my hands pale as they hovered over the keyboard, hesitation stripped away by betrayal. I opened the first account, the joint mortgage. Every month, for 3 years, I'd paid it. Quietly. Without thanks. Without even so much as a reminder from Amanda. Auto payment, active. Scheduled for next Friday. I clicked cancel. A warning popped up. Are you sure you want to disable this payment? I clicked yes. The screen blinked. Then turned green. Payment successfully cancelled. The silence in the room deepened. Not empty. Solid. One thread severed. I moved on. Car insurance, Harry's name listed second, mine listed first. Of course it was. He'd charmed the agent, said Dad's got better rates. Click. Cancel. Groceries? They'd been using the family debit card linked to the main household account. Amanda once joked, "You won't notice, what's $150 a week?" I removed her as an authorized user. Utilities? I let those ride. Not out of mercy. But because the electricity cutting out would sting more than a bounced check. Bank statements lay open like a battlefield, columns of betrayal, rows of assumption. For 30 years, I'd signed every form, written every line of protection. Now, one by one, I erased them. The final click was the hardest. Inheritance account access. She didn't know I'd set up a side fund after Martha's passing. I'd never told Amanda. It was meant for emergencies. Grandchildren's tuition, medical needs, future kindnesses. But I saw her name recently added under beneficiary. Not mine. Not Martha's. Theirs. I removed it. The screen flickered. The space went blank. That was the moment. I stood, stepped away from the table, and looked out the motel window. Outside, traffic whispered down the highway. Somewhere across town, Amanda and Harry were still sleeping, dreaming in a house they didn't own, secured by money they thought infinite. I picked up my phone. Checked voicemails. None yet. But they'd come. I knew the pattern. First the decline. Then confusion. Then panic. And then, the call. I sat back down and opened one last tab. A document I hadn't looked at in years, the deed to the house. My name. Martha's name. Now, only mine. I printed it. Folded it carefully. Slipped it next to her photo in my suitcase. A knock came on the motel wall, room next door. Someone waking early. Another man tired of being disrespected, maybe. I opened the checkbook once more, not to write. Just to look. Only one check left. I ran my finger across the blank square. And then I closed it. For good. Not out of defeat. But because I had learned the most powerful thing I could say was no longer written in ink, it was clicked in silence. By noon, their phones would light up. By evening, their balance would bounce. And by nightfall, my silence would speak louder than their entitlement ever had. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Cut them off, or given them one last chance? Let me know in the comments. By Wednesday, my phone showed 12 missed calls. By Friday, there were 22. No messages at first, just silent hang-ups. Then came the voicemails. Short. Disjointed. Amanda's voice rising, then cracking. Dad, the mortgage didn't go through. We need to talk. Dad. The car insurance, they said we're uninsured. Call me back. The background changed with each one. First the kitchen. Then what sounded like a parking lot. Then crying. A muffled argument. Harry's voice low, angry. Hers, panicked. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I sat in the stillness of the motel, drinking black coffee from a paper cup and watching the world through the dusty windowpane. There was a peace in that silence, a boundary I'd never drawn until now. Every call they made rang into the void they created. They weren't reaching for me. They were reaching for the money. The same money they said I was hoarding. The same house they said I didn't deserve. And now? Now they needed me. Not for wisdom. Not for forgiveness. But for cover. The motel room felt small, but clean. No photos on the walls. No laughter down the hallway. No sound of Martha's humming or Amanda's childhood footsteps. Just the hum of the mini fridge and the ticking of the cheap plastic clock above the bathroom door. I replayed one message again. Amanda's voice. I know you're upset. But this is still your family. You don't abandon family. That word. Family. They weaponized it. Twisted it. I abandoned nothing. They just expected my dignity to be renewable. And for the first time, I said no. I stepped outside for air. A crisp morning breeze carried the scent of bacon and gravel. Across the parking lot, an old man sat in a lawn chair outside his room, sipping from a thermos and nodding as I passed. "Morning," he said. I nodded back. We didn't need to know each other's names. Men like us recognized something deeper, the quiet resignation of those who'd been pushed too far, too long. Inside the diner later that day, Julie, still friendly, still watchful, refilled my mug without asking. "Your daughter came by again," she said quietly. "Didn't eat. Just sat there. Looked wrecked." I said nothing. "She told Mel at the counter that you'd lost your mind. That you were lashing out." Still, I didn't speak. Julie leaned in. "I told Mel that the Bill Wilkinson I know doesn't lash out. He calculates." I met her eyes. And nodded once. Back in the room that night, I played the final voicemail. Harry this time. No charm. No smirk. Just raw frustration. "All right, old man. Joke's over. This house is under your name, yeah, but don't forget, I've got people too. Lawyers. We'll see how long you can play this game. Call me back. Last chance." I deleted the message. Then I got ready. Pressed my shirt. Cleaned my shoes. The sun had gone down, but I wasn't sleeping. Because I knew what desperation breeds. Not humility. Threats. A knock came at the door around 9:12 p.m. I didn't jump. Didn't rush. I moved slowly. Checked the peephole. And there they were. Amanda's eyes red. Harry pacing like a caged dog. His hand slammed once on the door. Not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to make a point. I didn't open it. Not yet. I let them stand in the cold hallway. Let them taste the same silence they'd forced down my throat for weeks. Amanda leaned closer. "Dad, please, we're freezing. Just talk to us." Harry muttered something I couldn't hear. And then? They sat. On the hallway floor. In the motel where I paid my own way. Outside the room they never thought I'd claim. I turned off the lights. Let them sit in the dark. Let the consequences settle. Because when a man takes back his dignity, the people who stole it always come knocking, and this time, I wasn't the one answering. A sharp knock rattled my motel door. Through the peephole, I saw my own blood. Amanda stood with her arms crossed, eyes red-rimmed, mascara streaked. Harry loomed behind her, pacing like a man running out of exits. I didn't open the door, not right away. I wanted them to wait. To sit with the silence they'd mocked. The same silence they thought made me weak. The knocking came again, softer this time. "Dad," Amanda called, her voice barely more than a whisper. "We need to talk." I clicked the latch, opened the door just enough to see their faces, worn, cracked, hollowed by consequence. Harry shoved forward, but I kept my foot behind the door. "Relax," I said. "You're not invited in." You can't do this, he snapped. You're destroying everything. You already did that, I replied. Amanda stepped closer. Dad, please. Just hear us out. I stepped back, let the door open, but only halfway. The line between threshold and entry was mine now, and I wasn't crossing it for either of them. They didn't dare step in. Not after what came next. Harry started first. You disabled the mortgage. The bank's threatening repossession. My insurance lapsed. They're talking about fines, back payments. Legal action. I nodded. Yes. He blinked. You're proud of that? No, I said. Just, resolved. Amanda bit her lip. We didn't mean for it to go this far. We thought you were just, she hesitated, upset. I walked to the desk, picked up the paper I had printed at the library 2 days ago, and laid it gently next to Martha's photo. Funny thing, I said, tapping the paper. I got a call from my old banker. Asked if I had decided to take out another home equity loan. Amanda paled. What? I nodded. $50,000. On my house. Loan application submitted online. Digital signature attached. Harry stiffened. That wasn't. I held up a finger. I didn't finish. I slid the paper toward them. Amanda took a step forward but stopped when she saw her name. Cosigner. Your name was on it, I said, voice calm. She blinked fast, trying to read something that wasn't there. Maybe you didn't understand what he asked you to sign, I offered. Maybe you thought it was insurance paperwork. Or maybe, I paused. Maybe you knew. Harry stepped in. All right, fine. I submitted it. But it wasn't fraud. Your family. We were just thinking long-term. Forgery, I said, is a felony. So is identity theft. Especially with a digital signature using someone's social security number. Amanda gasped. You gave us your info years ago. For college stuff. That was a gift, I replied. Not a license. She looked at Harry. You said it was legal. He hissed back, it's legal if he doesn't press charges. I stared at them both. So now I'm the threat. Amanda reached out. Dad, no. Please. I didn't know about this. I swear. I thought, he told me it was something else. He said we were consolidating our debts. I picked up the document again, folded it in half, then placed it beside Martha's photo. Consolidation, I said quietly, is when you own the debt. Not when you sign it over to someone else. Harry scoffed. You're really gonna go to the police over this? I looked him straight in the eye. No. I'm going to the sheriff. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Amanda started to cry. I just wanted to help him, she whispered. I thought if we had the car, and the house stabilized, and you weren't always judging him, he could finally stand up. I stayed silent. She wiped her face. We didn't mean to steal. We were trying to survive. Survive, I repeated. By lying. By forging. By pushing me out. She nodded, ashamed. Harry spoke again, lower now. If this goes to court, we lose everything. I shrugged. Maybe you should have thought of that before you bet everything on a man who never earned it. He stepped forward, face flush. You think you're so righteous, just an old man with a checkbook and a grudge. No, I said. I'm a father with a line you finally crossed. The silence that followed stretched long and wide. Amanda's voice cracked. What happens now? I pointed to the door. You go home. You wait. And when the sheriff shows up, you tell the truth. Or don't. Either way, the papers are already signed. They stood there for a second longer. Then Harry muttered, "This isn't over." I nodded once. "No. It's just finally begun." They left, no more threats, no more pleas. Just footsteps echoing down the motel hallway. And as the door clicked shut behind them, I sat at the desk, smoothed the paper flat again, and looked at my late wife's face. She didn't smile any less. And neither did I. Because their greatest mistake wasn't stealing from me, it was assuming I'd never fight back. But now, they'd see just how dangerous a quiet man can be when his name has been dragged through the mud. If you want to know what the sheriff did next, don't miss what's coming. By Monday morning, my anger had cooled into something sharper: paperwork and signatures. The county courthouse wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The quiet click of a stamp, the soft shuffle of documents, the dry cough from a paralegal, all of it sounded like justice sharpening its blade. I carried two things in hand: the official deed to my house and the forged loan application with Amanda and Harry's names. Both were tucked inside an old blue folder, the same one Martha used to store our wills. The clerk behind the counter adjusted her glasses. "What can I help you with today, Mr. Wilkinson?" "I'd like to file for eviction," I said. Her hands paused. "Against your?" "My daughter and her husband." She blinked but didn't ask why. Small towns learn when to stay quiet. "I also need to initiate fraud review on a forged document, this one," I said, sliding the paper forward. "Attempted home equity loan using my identity. Signatures here are digital forgeries." She looked over the paperwork. "Did you file a police report?" "I'm on my way to do that next." She nodded, stapled the first form, and pushed a thick packet toward me. "Initial hearing will be set in 2 weeks. You'll need to serve them within 5 days." I took the papers. Her eyes softened. "I'm sorry you're having to do this." I nodded. "So am I." Next stop, the police station. Detective Nolan was an old acquaintance. Not a friend, not quite, but a man who once helped me file a theft report when my shed was broken into years ago. He remembered me instantly. "What brings you in, Bill?" I dropped the loan application on his desk. "This." He read it silently, then exhaled through his nose. "This is serious." I nodded. "And the signatures?" He tilted the page toward the light. "Pre-filled digital. Traceable IP. If your name's on the deed and you didn't authorize this, yeah. It's a felony attempt." I didn't smile. "Good. Want to file a criminal complaint?" "I want it on record," I said. "What happens after depends on them." He scribbled notes, filled out a report, and said, "You're doing the right thing." I folded the police report into the same folder and left without looking back. Outside, the sun hit my face and for the first time in weeks, I felt warmth without weight. I stopped at the diner for coffee. Julie looked up and smiled, but softer this time, respectful. "You good?" she asked. "Getting there," I said. The man in the booth behind me leaned forward as I paid. "Word is, they tried to take your house. That true?" I didn't deny it. He nodded slowly. "You're doing the right thing." The word had spread. Not as a whisper anymore, but as confirmation. The town wasn't choosing sides. They already had. I walked back to the motel and laid the folder on the desk beside Martha's photo. She used to tell me justice moves slow, but when it arrives, it doesn't knock. It opens the door. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened my phone, and scanned my texts. No apology from Amanda. No update from Harry. Just silence. But now, I wasn't the one stuck waiting. They were. Later that evening, a text finally came. "Amanda, Dad, we need to talk." Please. The sheriff came by. I put the phone down. Didn't reply. I stood, picked up the folder, and placed it back inside my suitcase. Everything I needed was now in writing. Because that's what they'd forgotten. They tried to win with manipulation. But they underestimated a man who learned to fight with documents, not fists. And when the courtroom doors opened, I wouldn't be seeking revenge, I'd be seeking clarity. Because this time, the truth would be read out loud, in front of everyone. The dealership called me first. They were looking for their car. Mr. Wilkinson, the man said over the phone, we have a bit of a situation. The down payment bounced. The financing fell through. The car's still in your name, and now, technically, in violation of contract. I almost laughed. Call Harry, I said. We did, he replied. He told us to speak with his co-signer, you. I paused. I'm not his co-signer. I'm his victim. There was a long silence on the other end. The man cleared his throat. Understood. We'll proceed accordingly. Click. That was Monday. By Wednesday, 2 credit card companies reached out. Amanda's name was attached to a joint account I hadn't used in years, back when she was still in college, before she married into delusion. The balances were maxed. One of them overdue. The woman on the phone asked, "Do you authorize these charges?" "No," I said. "Would you like to open a fraud case?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. By Friday, the facade had collapsed. Amanda showed up at the courthouse alone, hair tied in a limp ponytail, dark bags under her eyes. Her clothes weren't what she usually wore, no polished heels or matching purse. Just jeans and a jacket 2 sizes too big. She looked like someone who'd been walking through a storm barefoot. I was there to drop off an amended filing, one that added the fraud complaints to the civil eviction suit. She didn't speak at first. Just stared. Then, "You reported us?" I didn't stop walking. "Dad. You reported your own daughter?" I turned to her slowly. "You forged my name. You tried to take my house. You lied about the car, the mortgage, the credit, and my mind." She swallowed hard. "I didn't know about all of it." "You knew enough," I said. "Enough to let it happen." Tears welled in her eyes. "They froze my accounts. They might repossess the car. Harry's job let him go yesterday, said too much heat. His references are being questioned." I nodded once. "I might lose my nursing license," she whispered. I looked her dead in the eye. "Then maybe you should have thought of that when you used a man's legacy like a lottery ticket." She opened her mouth but nothing came out. When I turned to leave, she didn't follow. That evening, I got another call, this time from an old friend at the church board. "We heard things got bad with Amanda and her guy. Heard it might go to court." "It's already there," I said. "People are asking questions. Some of us, we feel like we should have seen it sooner." I didn't respond. What was there to say? They saw what I showed them. I spent so long protecting her reputation, shielding Harry's mess, hiding my bruises in silence. But silence doesn't protect, it only delays the truth. That night at the motel, I pulled the checkbook out again. 1 check left. I opened it. Stared at the blank square. This check wouldn't be used to pay bills. Wouldn't go toward groceries or repairs or birthday gifts. No, this one would never be written. Because its presence, its weight, was the reminder. A final page. An unfinished goodbye. That Saturday, I received one last call, from Paul McKinley, the mechanic. "Saw Harry arguing with a repo guy this morning," he said. "Car's gone. Whole neighborhood watched." He paused. "Guy's reputation's toast, Bill. Yours?" I'd say you're finally getting it back. The paper trail was done. The silence was broken. And soon, the courtroom doors would open, and everyone would hear just how far they had fallen. By Wednesday, I didn't need to defend myself. The whole town was already doing it for me. It started in whispers, just like everything else in this place. At the diner, the cashier leaned in and said, "Saw the repo truck last week. Heard it took Harry's new toy. That true?" I nodded once. Didn't offer more. She smiled. Good. About time people saw who really kept things running in that family. Then came the post office. As I stood in line to mail the final copies of the court filings, Mrs. Green stepped out of line and gently touched my arm. "I remember when Amanda used to run through my sprinklers in summer," she said. "Never imagined she'd end up like this." "She made her choices," I said. "And you made yours," she added. "The right ones." Later that day, I stopped at the hardware store. Ed, the owner, was stacking salt bags out front. He nodded at me. "Still got those hands that built a house, huh?" "Still got the house," I said. He chuckled. "Heard Harry's hands only know how to open other people's wallets." Another customer laughed behind him. The tide had turned. Where once they whispered about the old man with the checkbook, now they nodded with quiet respect. Not pity. Respect. I visited the church next. Not to pray, but to sit. Martha's favorite pew was still there, fourth from the front, left side. I didn't need to speak. The pastor spotted me and made his way over after service. "William," he said. "You've been in our thoughts." I looked up. "I'm not here for sympathy." "Good," he said. "You're here for truth." He sat beside me. "Some of the board members were approached by Amanda a few months ago," he admitted. "Said you were struggling. Asked about power of attorney. Wanted the church's support in getting you help." My jaw didn't move, but something inside me cracked. "She was laying the groundwork," I muttered. He nodded solemnly. "We didn't act on it. Something felt off." "I'm glad you didn't." He rested a hand on my shoulder. "It takes courage to speak truth when love clouds the air." "No," I said. "It takes desperation. The kind you reach when the people you raise try to erase you." He stood. "Whatever happens next, William, you've reminded us all that dignity can't be stolen. It must be surrendered. And you didn't." After he walked away, I sat there for another hour. Quiet. Still. In control. That night at the diner, Harry walked in. Alone. He looked thinner. His swagger had cracked. He approached my booth, uninvited, and stood awkwardly. "I'm not here to fight," he said. I sipped my coffee. "Things are bad," he added. "Job's gone. The bank's talking collections. People look at us like we're animals." I set my cup down. "You made your bed," I said. "We were desperate," he said, voice low. "No," I replied. "You were greedy. Amanda was desperate." He shifted. "Is there any way we can fix it?" "Fix?" I leaned forward. "You forged a loan, stole from me, mocked me in my own home, and now you want a repair?" He didn't respond. "I have nothing for you," I said. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Behind him, I noticed people watching. Julie behind the counter. Ed from the hardware store. A couple from church. No one said a word. But their stares were loud. Harry left without another sound. Julie approached after. He had that coming. I didn't answer. She refilled my cup. "You did right, Bill." I stirred the cream into the coffee and looked at the reflection inside the cup. It was quiet now. Not peaceful, but earned. The next morning, a letter from the sheriff's office confirmed the hearing date. 1 week. And in 7 days, their shame wouldn't hide behind closed doors anymore, it would walk into court, exposed under oath. The courtroom smelled like paper, sweat, and quiet shame. Hard floors. Wooden pews. Fluorescent lights that buzzed with judgment. Not the fire and brimstone kind, just the cold, administrative kind that says, "You are not above this." Amanda sat beside Harry at the defendant's table. Her hands shook. His eyes darted from face to face, scanning for allies and finding none. The sheriff sat near the exit. Julie from the diner showed up in the back row. So did Mrs. Green. And Ed. Even the pastor came. Not to testify. Just to watch. Because some reckonings don't need an invitation, they just need a time and place. The judge called my name. "Mr. William Wilkinson?" I stood. He reviewed the file with furrowed brows. Plaintiff alleges property fraud, financial manipulation, and unlawful occupation of a deeded home. Documents submitted include notarized deed, forged loan application, and credit disputes. Is that accurate? Yes, Your Honor, I said. He turned to Amanda. Her voice cracked. We didn't mean to hurt him. The judge's gavel hit lightly. This isn't about intent. This is about action. Harry leaned into the mic. We were trying to stabilize. I was building a future. By forging documents? The judge asked. Harry stammered. We were misunderstood. No, the judge said. You were arrogant. He turned to me. Mr. Wilkinson, do you wish to proceed with eviction and formal charges? The room held its breath. I opened my briefcase. Pulled out 2 envelopes. One, a printed letter signed and notarized, authorizing the sheriff's office to proceed with full eviction within 10 days. The second, smaller. I held it for a moment. Then said, I do. The judge nodded. Then the court grants immediate ownership recognition and transfer of eviction enforcement to the local sheriff's office. Further charges may be filed by the state regarding the loan application. He banged the gavel. Just like that, it was official. Amanda sobbed quietly. Harry's jaw tensed like a cracked gear. I walked out without looking back. But I didn't go far. In the hallway just outside the courtroom, I paused beside the metal donation box labeled, Veteran Support Fund, Court-Initiated Giving Program. I opened the second envelope. Inside, the final check from my old checkbook. Still unsigned. Still blank. I folded it once, slid it into the box, and walked away. A symbolic denial. Because that check would never go to them. Would never go to heirs who betrayed their own blood. Instead, it would rot inside that box, a silent monument to the cost of entitlement. Later that day, Amanda called me from an unknown number. Dad, what happens now? I answered with silence. You really gave the house away? No, I said. I took it back. There's nothing left, she whispered. There's dignity, I said. It's more than what you came for. Then I hung up. That evening, the sheriff texted me a photo. Amanda and Harry on the front lawn, holding boxes. A notice of vacate stapled to the door behind them. Their car gone. Neighbors watching. No one offered to help them pack. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because my revenge wasn't for keeping. It was for letting go. They were gone. The house was mine. And yet, I hadn't returned, not yet. Because the final chapter wasn't about what I took back, it was about what I was willing to leave behind. I found them waiting on the church steps, no home, no plan, no pride left. Amanda's eyes were puffy, her clothes layered like armor against a wind that hadn't yet arrived. Harry stood behind her, smaller now somehow. No jacket. No bravado. Just hands buried in his pockets like they were trying to hide what he'd done. They didn't speak at first. Didn't need to. Their silence was the loudest apology I'd ever heard. "I figured you'd be at the courthouse again," Amanda said softly. "Julie said you come here sometimes." I nodded. "This isn't a place for begging." "We're not begging," Harry said. Amanda glanced at him. "Yes, we are." She held something out, a torn envelope. My name written in shaky ink. "I found this," she whispered. "In the donation box. You didn't sign it." I didn't move. She stepped closer. "You could have used this check to destroy us. Or, save us." "It wasn't for either," I said. "Then why write it?" she asked. "I didn't," I replied. "That's why it's blank." Tears welled in her eyes. "Dad, please. I know we were wrong. I know what we did was cruel. But we lost everything." Harry muttered, "We've been sleeping in my cousin's garage. It smells like gasoline and mold. We can't keep living like this." "That's what happens," I said calmly, "when you build a future on someone else's past." Amanda shook her head. "You raised me better than this." "No," I said. "I raised you with everything I had. You made your own choices." She walked closer. "Just, give us one chance. Not the house. Not the money. Just, a job. A couch. Anything. I'll sweep floors. I'll work nights." "You already had everything," I said. "And you decided it wasn't enough." She broke down then, knees hitting the stone steps like the weight finally caught up. Harry didn't move to help her. He just looked away. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm sorry I made you feel like a burden. I'm sorry I let him talk me into all of it. The checkbook, the mortgage, the lies." I stepped down beside her but didn't touch her. "I don't hate you," I said. "But I can't trust you. Not yet." Harry stepped forward. "So what? You just leave your daughter like this?" "No," I said. "I just stop carrying her for free." Amanda looked up. "Then what now?" "You find your own footing," I said. "That's what Martha and I did. That's what every grown-up eventually has to do." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. I handed her something, not money. Not keys. A folded paper. "The local shelter is hiring. So is the hardware store. Tell Ed I sent you." She looked at the paper like it was gold. "It's not a handout," I said. "It's a doorway." She stood. "And if we walk through it? Then you might just find something worth keeping," I said. "But you have to earn it." Harry scoffed. "This is pathetic." Amanda turned on him. "Then go sleep in your cousin's car. I'm done pretending we deserve better just because we want it." He didn't follow her as she stepped away from the church steps. Didn't call after her. Just stood there, arms crossed, teeth clenched against a world that had finally stopped bending for him. She turned back once. "I'll prove it," she said. "I'll prove I can be better." "I hope you do," I replied. She walked away. The envelope with the unsigned check still in her hand. Still unopened. Still blank. Exactly as it should be. Because sometimes the hardest forgiveness isn't for them, it's for yourself. And as I watched her disappear around the corner, I realized this wasn't the end of a war, it was the beginning of a new kind of peace. It ended where everything started, at the house I built with my own hands. The lawn was overgrown. The porch creaked like it had aged 10 years in just 2 months. But it was still mine. Still standing. Still waiting for me to come home. I unlocked the front door slowly, quietly. Like I was waking something that had fallen into a deep, bruised sleep. Inside, the air was stale. But the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was sacred. The living room still held the ghost of Martha's laughter. The kitchen still echoed the smell of her Sunday pot roast. The stairs remembered Amanda's young feet racing upward in pigtails and pajamas. So much history inside these walls. And for a while, I thought they were just memories. But now, I knew, they were anchors. I lit the fireplace for the first time since all this began. Tossed in newspaper. Watched the flames catch and rise. Then I did what I'd been meaning to do for weeks. I pulled out the final check, the one Amanda found, the one I had left and signed, untouched. Still blank. Still whole. I looked at it one last time, then held it over the flame. It caught fast. Burned quiet. No drama. Just paper turning into ash, like the version of me that let others write his story for him. When it was nothing but black flakes, I scooped the ashes gently into a folded napkin and tucked them into an old envelope, the one that once held the deed to the house. Later that day, I walked to the church. Service was over. Only a few people remained, Pastor Lee, Julie, and Ed, sipping coffee in the foyer. They didn't ask why I was there. They just nodded. I walked to the altar, placed the envelope down, and whispered, "For her." Then I turned and left. Outside, the town looked different. Not newer. Not better. But clearer. The people who once whispered now waved. The ones who once questioned now nodded. Word had gotten around. The hearing. The eviction. The silence I chose over shouting. They saw it all now, not as cruelty, but as courage. Back at the diner, Julie poured me a fresh cup. Same booth. Same view of Main Street. "You going to keep the house?" she asked. "For now," I said. "What about Amanda?" "She'll be fine," I said. "She's already working at the shelter. Says she likes folding blankets." Julie smiled. "That's something." Harry, I'd heard, had skipped town. Left Amanda behind. Left the town behind. But not the shame. That would follow him. And Amanda? She still called once a week. Not for money. Not for favors. Just to say she was trying. And for now, that was enough. I reached into my coat and pulled out something new, a small, black leather notebook. Empty pages. Blank. Not for checks. Not for debts. Just stories. Memories I hadn't let myself write down until now. I opened to page 1 and scribbled the first line. "This house was built with calloused hands and quiet dreams. Because legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what survives when they try to take everything from you, and fail." I sipped my coffee and looked out the window. Fall had come early this year. The leaves turning without asking permission. Just like me. The ashes of the final check rested on the altar, tucked into the envelope that once held my life's worth, and in letting it burn, I didn't just get my house back. I got my name back. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done if your own child crossed this line? And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories from the heart. Until next time, take care of your name, your dignity, and the truth.